So tell me, you a leader or a follower?
I'm a leader.
Lead and Be Legendary presents.
Right back at it with another episode of LABL Podcast, Leading Me Legendary Podcast. I'm your host, Nametag Alexander. Check this out. Before we get into discussing this episode's topic, I encourage you to visit the LABL website, leadingmelegendary.net. It's the LABL store that's there. You can get you some merch. Go to the LABL store, get you a hat, get you the LABL snapback hat, get you the t-shirts. We got more merch that's going to be available soon. If you haven't done so already, be sure to check out or stream my latest single. It's titled Bass. It's produced by Timestretch. Shout out to the homie Timestretch out in Cali. Shout out to DJ Tico on the additional cuts on a joint that made it extra fire. But it's available on all platforms. You can stream, or if you buy your music, that's Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube Music, Amazon, Deezer for my overseas folk, Bandcamp for sure. That's where you can buy it directly. My Bandcamp, which would be nametag.bandcamp.com. Up until I release my next project, which is more than likely going to be an EP. It's also produced entirely by Timestretch. I got per week, and I started this at the top of July. Per week, I've been releasing a song or two, and I'm going to do this all the way throughout August, where basically it's going to be songs that people may or may not have heard, but they weren't on the streaming platforms. They weren't on Apple Music. They weren't on Spotify, but you can follow that. So be sure to follow me on those platforms such as Spotify or Apple Music, so on and so forth. Now, I'm going to get into this episode. We're going to talk about metadata, music metadata, or metadata, whatever is necessary for indie artists to be familiar with that, because that's important as far as like how you collect your income from music. So you don't want to leave much money on the table, pretty much. A lot of music artists, I've been victim of this, leaving money on the table, where it's something as easy as just making sure the metadata for your music is correct. Now, there are three main components to metadata in releasing music. We're going to start with one, which is the description component, or I guess you would call it the descriptive component, which is basically the details of the song recording, such as, I guess you would say the song title, the main music genre that song title was based in, such as whether it's, I don't know why they got hip hop as a genre. Well, hip hop is technically a culture. Well, let's say if it's a song that's under rap, you might have alternative genres for that, where it's a subgenre of rap for the most part. But that's part of that first component. The track number, who's the performing artist, such as your alias as a song artist, and the songwriter, the composer. You get where I'm going with that. But that's the first component, the descriptive component. You have two, which is the performing rights or ownership. Now, this is just the information that's needed to submit, making sure that the main parties that are involved in that song pretty much get paid accordingly. So that applies to the songwriters, the producers, and also the publishers. Now, it's a key reason this matters to be registered with a PRO, or overall what that stands for is Performing Rights Organization. Like if you've heard of ASCAP, BMI, overseas with I think CSAC is overseas. I want to say that that's overseas, but I believe that's invite only. Anyway, that's necessary to be registered with a performing rights organization. But that second component falls under that. And I'll likely also cover that in another episode. But that's the second component of metadata, performing rights or ownership. Now, the last component that's important with music metadata is recommendation. The recommendation piece is pretty much just the key for music discovery on apps like I mentioned earlier, Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer, Bandcamp, YouTube for sure, and Amazon. But that's important because with some music distribution services, depending on if it's I don't distribute with my music to CD Baby or TuneCore any longer, but a lot of music distribution platforms allow you to include tags for your music, such as like the mood of the song, of the subgenre, like I talked about earlier. So if it's like, let's say if it's rap, but it's up tempo, it got like a dance element to it. So you can include it as rap, but also dance or like house music per se. But it allows you to do that, describing the mood of the song, whether it's like a melancholy type mood, or whether it's I don't know, they may have something that's like you may see something online. Is this ambitious? Is it a motivational type song? Is it inspirational? You get to add stuff like that with the recommendation piece of submitting your song as far as the metadata is concerned. But that's important with preparing your release. And also when you submit the song, I know with the Spotify artist website, you could do playlist pitching. Now in playlist pitching, you're required to provide a brief description of the song. I mentioned the moods earlier, but when you're pitching for playlists on Spotify, they want you to include like the your artist bio, like I say, the description of the song, not a lengthy description, but pretty much just something that's like, I don't know, maybe like a blurb. I guess you would call it a blurb, probably pretty much like maybe 5 sentences or so, paragraph, basically, just describing your song. I don't even know if it got to be a paragraph for the most part, but just something real quick to describe the song, just to get them familiar and get an understanding to how they're going to place that song on those playlists and what playlist it will work within. Now, it's not just a benefit to you as far as playlisting, but it's also beneficial as far as someone coming across your music. That's pretty much, let's say if they're listening to other artists with a similar sound, for example, trying to think, which part? Oh, my Spotify profile. If you go to my Spotify profile, it'll show you where it says fans also like. And under that, you will see artists such as Black Milk. You'll see Guilty Simpson. You will see Sky Zoo. Now, I credit that to my music distributors, which is Believe, which is overseas based. I believe Believe is, I believe Believe is based in France, but that's one of my music distributors. And also shout out to Detroit Digital. But I credit that to them because I submit and put in all this information, but they still got a job to do as far as like making sure it's in the right places and making sure that my music is matched up with other artists that are similar or may sound, I don't want to say sound the same, exclusively like the artists that I named. None of us sound alike. None of us sound like each other, but the vibe of the music is kind of similar. So that kind of works when it comes to metadata as far as the recommendation piece. But like I say, this wasn't going to be too lengthy of an episode, something pretty short just to get across the point of why metadata is important. Now, metadata at the end of the day, that's administrative. That's administration work. So it can be pretty boring, but shit is necessary. Like I've searched too many times, like put it like this, not to go left with it, but put it like this. I've searched a lot of information for songs. Like if I may need an artist information as far as like their government name as a songwriter, or if they're registered as a publishing entity with a performing rights organization. But let's say if I go search in the database of like ASCAP or BMI, but I can't find any of this information, 9.5 times out of 10, it's because the metadata, we're going to say metadata. If you say it real fast, you won't be able to say it 5 times fast, right? But if I search that information, I can't find it. All I'm finding is the, let's say the song title and just the performing artist name. That means that metadata was placed incorrectly. And it's kind of like all over the place. Like you shouldn't go, if you go into ASCAP database, their song repertoire search, you should be able to find, you could search Nametag Alexander as the performing artist, right? And you should be able to look there and see my government name, my publishing name, because that's separate. Like the publisher, like you, for one, when you record a song and release it, you're automatically the songwriter and publisher of that song. But I'm talking about actually registering as a publishing entity. Like I'll just give you an example. Let's say MC name tag, that's my performing name, right? Which is whack if it was that, but that's me as a performing artist. But then also as a publisher, I'm registered as Boom Bap Religion. You know what I'm saying? That's my publisher name. You would see something like that in the ASCAP database when it comes to looking up music of mine. So let's say if you featured on that song, or whatever, you're an artist that featured on that song, and you're like, well, I need to know who all the artists were. Let's say if it's you and 3 other artists, and you're like, well, I need to know what other artists are featured on that song. I know it's so-and-so, but I don't know their names though. You trying to register this, and we're going on a deep dive, and this is for another episode, so I ain't gonna spend too much time on it. But you looking at sounds, you want to register this stuff through Sound Exchange, but you don't know the artist names. So it's like, damn, if you don't see any of that, if you don't see the songwriter name or the publishers or what publishing administration registered this music through a database through BMI or like ASCAP, then the metadata is incorrect, or it just hasn't been registered at all. A lot of people do that. A lot of people will release their music through a distributor like TuneCore or CD Baby, and that's it. It doesn't just stop there. Now, the problem with that is you do this, you release it through a music distributor like a TuneCore, or CD Baby, or DistroKid. DistroKid is another. And you're wondering why, like, damn, man, I ain't really seeing no bread off these streams. I ain't really getting nobody buying the music. And it's like, yeah, you might saw a little bit off of it. But the reason you're not seeing as much as you could is because you're leaving money on the table because the songs haven't been properly registered, let alone registered at all. So that's why metadata is important. It's boring. It's boring when you got to enter in this information and do it. And this if you're doing it yourself. Most of the time, people have folks that are in place, like I say, a publishing administration that register this music for you. So that's another episode. We ain't gonna spend too much time on that, but that's why metadata, can't say it 5 times fast, is why it's important. Anyhow, Leading Me Legendary is the web, leadingmelegendary.net. Leadingmelegendary.net is the website. Again, visit the Label store while you're there. Order the hat, the Label snapback hat. We got the t-shirts. More merch is coming soon. Bass, the single, is available now. Shout out to the homie Timestretch. Anyway, man, that's it. I ain't gonna keep up too much of y'all time. That's it. Again, Nametag Alexander on all platforms where you can buy and stream music, such as Apple Music, Spotify, etc., etc. leadingmelegendary.net. leadingmelegendary.net. I'm out. Peace. I'm so gone. You ain't on my live, and I'm so gone. La, 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 hey, and I'm so gone.